The Arizona sun burned high above, searing the land into a mirage of gold and heat. Luke Carson had been riding for 3 days without a drop of water, his canteen long dry and his horse stumbling beneath him. The desert stretched endlessly, a cruel expanse where men vanished without leaving bones. He'd heard of an oasis called the Sacred Lake, a place whispered about in saloons and mining camps, but no one dared approach it. They said spirits guarded it, ancient ones who punished trespassers. But Luke didn't believe in ghosts, only thirst, and thirst didn't care for legends. As dusk crept in, the horizon shimmered like glass. Then through the dying light he saw it, a stretch of silver water surrounded by willow-like trees, impossibly alive amid death. His heart kicked in his chest. "We made it, boy," he rasped to his horse, voice cracked and dry. The animal barely snorted. Luke slid from the saddle, boots sinking into soft sand, and staggered toward the shore. He knelt down, trembling fingers reaching for the cool, glassy surface. But the instant his hand touched the lake, everything went still. The wind, the insects, even the faint rustle of his horse behind him, silenced. The air grew heavy, the temperature dropping like a shadow passing across the sun. Ripples spread across the water, though no breeze blew. Luke froze. Then slowly, mist began to rise from the lake's heart, thin tendrils that thickened, twisting upward until they took shape. He stepped back, heart hammering, as 3 figures emerged, tall, graceful, their dark hair glistening like wet ink. Apache women, adorned with feathers and turquoise beads, eyes glowing like embers beneath the moonlight. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Luke swallowed hard. I didn't mean no harm," he stammered, his voice shaking. "Just needed water." The tallest woman stepped forward, her gaze piercing but sorrowful. "No white man crosses our water," she said, her accent melodic yet firm. "This lake belongs to the spirits. To touch it is to bind your life to it." Luke frowned, confused. "Bind my life," he echoed. Another woman, younger, smiled faintly. "You have trespassed," she said softly, "and now you owe a life debt." The word sent a chill down his spine. Luke took another step back, hand twitching toward his revolver, but the eldest woman's eyes glimmered, and suddenly his hand froze mid-air. He couldn't move. The air shimmered with unseen energy, the mist swirling around him like invisible chains. What do you want from me?" he managed to whisper. The woman's voice dropped to a whisper, ancient and echoing. "To make right what men like you have wronged for generations. The spirits demand balance." Then, as if the world tilted, his knees buckled and darkness swallowed him whole. When Luke awoke, it was daylight again. He lay inside a hut, made of woven reeds and hides, the scent of sage and smoke filling the air. His shirt was gone, a band of cool clay wrapped around his wrist. Outside, he could hear the faint sound of women singing in a language he didn't know. He sat up slowly, dizzy. For a moment he thought it had been a dream, but then the same 3 women appeared at the doorway, their presence calm but unyielding. The eldest spoke. "You are alive because the lake allowed it." Luke rubbed his temples. "Allowed it?" "Lady, I didn't mean to offend no lake. She raised a hand, silencing him. "You came seeking water," she said. But the water sought something else. It chose you. The youngest sister, her eyes curious and almost kind, brought him a bowl of stew. "Eat," she said. "You will need your strength." Luke hesitated, then took a cautious bite. It was good, spiced, earthy, real. "What happens now?" he asked between mouthfuls. The middle sister glanced toward the doorway. "You will stay," she said simply. "Until the debt is repaid." Luke frowned. "Stay? I've got a ranch 200 miles east and men waiting on me." The eldest woman's expression softened. "No one waits for you, Luke Carson," she said. "Your ranch burned in the spring storm. The spirits told us." His spoon froze halfway to his mouth. "That's impossible," he whispered. But deep down, he knew it was true. He'd been gone too long, chasing ghosts of cattle and coin. "So what? You plan to keep me here forever?" he asked bitterly. The woman looked at him for a long, quiet moment. "Forever is not long," she said. As the days passed, Luke worked among them, fetching wood, tending fires, and learning the rhythm of the desert. The sisters, Naya the eldest, Suri the healer, and Tala the youngest, spoke to him in fragments, teaching him their tongue, their songs, their rituals. Slowly, he began to see the land as they did, not as empty but alive. Every stone, every gust of wind held a story. One evening, as the sun sank behind the red cliffs, Luke sat beside the lake again, staring at his reflection. "You're losing your mind," he muttered. But the reflection smiled back, not entirely his own. That night he dreamed of fire. He stood in a vast desert, the sacred lake before him, glowing like liquid moonlight. From its depths, 3 hands reached out, pulling him forward, not in fear, but in surrender. Voices whispered his name soft as wind. "Luke Carson," they said. "You're bound now. You carry the spirit of balance." When he awoke, sweat covered his brow, and the sisters were waiting outside the hut. "The dream came?" Naya asked. He nodded slowly. She smiled, ancient and sad. "Then it has begun. You are no longer a stranger, but part of the circle." The next morning, Luke helped mend fishing nets by the lake. His hands were clumsy, but Suri guided him patiently. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "There are better men, stronger, braver." Suri shook her head. "The lake does not choose strength. It chooses truth." Luke looked down at his hands, scarred and trembling. He'd done things he wasn't proud of, raids, debts, fights that ended in blood. Maybe this was his punishment, or his redemption. As dusk fell, the sisters gathered by the fire, painting symbols on his arms. The air grew heavy again, just as it had that first night. Naya stepped closer, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "Luke Carson," she said softly, "by the law of the sacred lake, you are now one with its daughters. What was debt is now bond. What was trespass is now union." He stared, unable to breathe. "Union," he repeated. Tala smiled gently. "You will not die alone," she said. Then as the desert wind howled, they pressed their hands to his chest, and for a heartbeat he felt the lake inside him flowing through his veins, ancient and eternal. The stars above seemed to hum with approval. His fate was sealed under that endless sky. And as the flames flickered low, Luke looked at the 3 sisters, each one different yet bound to the same spirit, and knew his life as a lone cowboy was over. The desert had taken everything from him once, but now it had given him something else, a place, a purpose, a family shaped by myth and mercy. He didn't know if he was cursed or blessed, but for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. Somewhere beyond the cliffs, coyotes cried into the night, carrying his name into the wind like a song the spirits would never forget. Days turned into weeks, and Luke Carson no longer counted the sunrises. He woke each dawn to the soft murmur of water and the distant hum of Apache chants drifting through the valley. The sacred lake, once a forbidden mirage, had become his home. He had learned to fish with bone hooks, to weave reed baskets, and to read the language of the wind as Naya taught him. Every evening he sat with the 3 sisters by the fire, listening to their stories, tales of spirits who lived within the earth, and of men who forgot to listen until it was too late. Naya, the eldest, spoke like the desert itself, slow, deep and steady. She carried the wisdom of generations in her eyes, the kind of silence that made Luke question his own noise. Suri, the middle sister, was the healer, her hands smelling of herbs and smoke. She spoke little but saw everything, and Tala, the youngest, laughed often, her laughter like rain over dry soil. Between them, Luke found something he hadn't known he'd been missing: peace. But in the West, peace never stayed long before men came to ruin it. One morning, as the sisters gathered herbs near the ridge, a column of dust rose in the distance. Luke's stomach twisted. He knew that sight, riders. He grabbed his rifle, the one he'd sworn never to raise again, and climbed the bluff. Through the shimmering air he saw them, 6 men on horseback, armed, hard-faced, raiders, maybe bounty hunters, maybe worse. He hurried down to warn the sisters. "Stay by the lake," he said. "They're coming." Naya met his eyes. "Then we will stand." Her tone held no fear, only calm resolve, as if she'd known this day would come. By the time the raiders reached the edge of the valley, Luke was already waiting, rifle in hand, heart pounding like a drum. "Ain't no reason for you to be here," he called out. Their leader, a scarred man with a whiskey grin, spat in the dust. "We heard about the lake," he sneered, "and about the women who haunt it. Reckon they'll fetch good coin." The others laughed, cruel and eager. Luke cocked his rifle. "You'll ride away," he said, voice low, "or you'll never ride again." The leader smirked. "Boy, you ain't got the numbers for a fight." Luke didn't flinch. "Don't need numbers. I've got the land." The gunfire came sudden and wild, echoing off the canyon walls. Luke fired back, his shots clean, each one chosen. But there were too many. The sisters moved like shadows behind him. Tala loosed arrows from the rocks. Suri tended his bleeding arm without fear, and Naya raised her arms toward the wind, whispering something ancient. Then it happened. The air shifted, cold and furious. A storm rose from nowhere, sand and wind swirling like living wrath. The raiders cursed, blinded, their horses rearing. Lightning cracked across the lake, white and blinding. When the storm finally broke, the men were gone. Only silence remained. Luke fell to his knees, chest heaving. What did you do?" He gasped. Naya knelt beside him, her voice barely above a whisper. "We did not summon the storm," she said. "The lake protects what it claims." Luke stared out across the still water, shimmering under the moon's return. For the first time he felt it, not fear but reverence. This place was alive. It had chosen him, and he could no longer pretend otherwise. He looked at the sisters, their faces glowing in the fading stormlight, and something in his heart shifted from survival to devotion. That night, the tribe gathered by the lakeshore, men and women who had come from distant canyons, drawn by the storm's sign. Fires burned in a wide circle, their light dancing across faces painted with clay and ash. Luke stood before them, unsure of what came next. Naya approached, holding a carved bowl filled with lake water. "You came seeking life," she said softly, "and the lake gave you its own." She dipped her fingers in the bowl and touched his forehead. "You are no longer wanderer, you are keeper." Luke swallowed hard. "Keeper of what?" he whispered. "Of balance," she replied. The ceremony began with chants older than memory. Suri tied a strip of deer hide around his wrist, marked with 3 symbols, the sun, the lake, and the joining hand. "For the earth, the water, and the bond between them," she murmured. Tala placed a feather in his hat, laughing softly. "Now you look like one of us." Luke smiled, but his chest ached with something deeper. The tribe encircled him, singing in rhythm with the crackle of the flames. Above them, stars spilled across the black sky like scattered embers, bearing witness to a vow that reached beyond mortal life. When the final song faded, Naya stepped forward. Her eyes gleamed like silver in the firelight. "By the will of the lake you are one with its daughters," she said. Luke looked at her, bewildered yet calm. "One?" she nodded. "What was debt is now bond. What was trespass is now trust. What was man and spirit are now one." Suri and Tala stood beside her, joining hands. Luke felt warmth flood through him, not from the fire but from within, like the lake's heartbeat pulsing in his chest. "You came seeking water," Naya whispered, "but found purpose." As the crowd dispersed into the night, Luke sat by the shore, the sisters beside him. The reflection of the stars rippled across the lake's surface, mingling with their faces. "You really mean for me to stay?" he asked quietly. Tala nodded. "The land does not give back what it keeps." Suri leaned against his shoulder, her voice soft as the wind. "You belong to the circle now." "To us!" Luke watched the moon drift over the water, realizing he no longer missed the world beyond the dunes. The man who had once chased cattle now guarded something sacred, something eternal. Seasons passed. The desert bloomed with rare rain, and the lake's waters shimmered brighter than ever. Travelers still whispered of the sacred lake, but none dared approach. Some said it was cursed. Others swore an unseen guardian kept watch. Both were right. Luke Carson's name faded from town records, but among the Apache, stories grew of a cowboy who loved the spirits and fought for their peace. They called him the keeper of the sacred lake, and though years blurred into myth, They said that when the moon was full, his voice could still be heard singing with the sisters. One evening, as twilight painted the cliffs in red and gold, Luke stood on the ridge watching the horizon. The world felt quiet, whole. Naya stepped beside him, her eyes reflecting the dying sun. "Do you regret it?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Not a damn thing," she nodded. "Then you have learned the lake's truth." He turned toward her. "And what's that?" Her smile deepened, timeless, that every man comes seeking something he's lost, but only a few find what they were meant to protect. Below them, the sacred lake shimmered, endless and alive, keeping its secrets and its love forever.